In Europe, stocks were higher in the morning despite an escalation of global tensions during the previous session. Well, let's see how that is playing out in the European space. Chelsea joins us now from the Frankfurt Stock Exchange. Good afternoon, Chelsea. Well, the U.S. has threatened new tariffs on French goods in response to plans for a digital tax that would hit U.S. tech giants like Facebook. How has France responded, and how are the shares of French companies that will be hit by the new tariffs reacting?
Well, France is really standing its ground here. They're saying they're not going to back down from their plans for a digital tax, which the U.S. is calling discriminatory. And they're also threatening to retaliate against the U.S. They've also been talking with the EU about a potential response on an EU level. So it does seem like the EU and France are ready to hit back if the U.S. does follow through with these tariffs. In terms of a market response, this has had a pretty a general downward pressure on French stocks. The French index is down. It's also, created some other selling pressure across other markets. But we're definitely seeing pretty big declines for the companies that would be impacted by these tariffs, especially those in the luxury good market. So France obviously has a lot of really sort of prolific fashion houses, things like that. Those would all potentially be impacted by these tariffs. So companies like LVMH down about 2% today, Hermes about 2% as well, and then Kering, the owner of Balenciaga, and Gucci is also down about the same amount. So it's definitely creating some fear among investors.
Doing similar digital taxes soon face similar tariff threats from President Trump?
Well, France is really the first, really the leader in this movement to implement a digital tax. So I think that's why they're being targeted right now. But there are definitely a lot of a lot of countries that have been considering taxes like this. So the U.S. mentioned Austria, Italy, as other countries that could face scrutiny of their digital taxes. But there are also about half a dozen, at least, other countries that are considering digital taxes. So they could all certainly come under the same sort of tariff pressure from the U.S. There is hope, though, that this would force a more international agreement on a digital tax, which had really been the hope all along, that all of these countries could sort of put an international framework. A lot that has sort of hit a lot of obstacles just because of how complicated it is. But the OECD is hoping to have a tax proposal by next year. So there is still hope that the U.S. will hold off on new tariffs until the OECD has time to put forward its own proposal.
Okay, let's take a look at how markets are reacting to a resurgence of political uncertainty in Germany after last weekend's unexpected leadership change for the Social Democrat Party raised doubts about the future of its coalition government with Angela Merkel's Christian Democrats. Are investors worried?
This definitely adds more political uncertainty into the European markets than we've really had for a while, especially here in Germany. This really could indicate a breakup of the coalition. It's not clear at this point if the new SPD leaders are going to try to leave the coalition. They're sort of supposed to be having those discussions over the next week. There is definitely hope that they will stick to the coalition, but it could certainly create some tension within the coalition already. Where this is really being seen in terms of a market reaction is the government bond market. Stocks and the euro are sort of being driven more by trade tensions and economic data right now, but the German government bond market has been hit by these new uncertainties. So over the past 2 days, there's been a definite sell-off in German government bonds, which has pushed yields up. So I think investors are waiting to see exactly what these new SPD leaders are going to do, what their decisions are going to be. But it certainly adds more risk into Germany's markets going forward.
All right, thank you, Chelsea, for those updates. Enjoy the rest of the day. Meanwhile, investors are monitoring several high-level meetings as NATO leaders gather in the UK to celebrate the 70th anniversary of the organization. But there are other noteworthy stories getting investors' interest. Let's bring in Juliana now to bring us up to speed with those. Hello, Juliana. Good afternoon. Let's begin with this interesting story coming from Sky Studios, which says the media giant is planning a new £3 billion TV and film studios in the UK. How huge is this project and how would it impact Sky's share of the market?
Good afternoon, Chimi. Well, this is a massive story, a really good, positive story for the UK creative and film industry. It's also a really good story for the Elstree area, which is just north of London in Hertfordshire. That's expected to boost the local economy there and the creative economy of the UK as a whole. Sky Studios Elstree is also expected to bring in 2,000 jobs when it opens for production in 2022, although there has been a series of media briefings by the top bosses there, and they're hoping that it will be ready for use before that. Now, Elstree Studios is already quite a prominent studio hub in the UK. Strictly Come Dancing, I'm not sure if you're a fan. I'm a huge fan. That's very big in UK households. That's already shot there. Also, as well, Star Wars. Elstree was the birthplace of that mammoth movie, and Big Brother, which I know our viewers will definitely know. They're already shot and filmed there. So this is expected to boost the production, and also that £3 billion that you mentioned, they're expecting that to be bought in by investors because, of course, we know Sky is owned by Comcast, and this production, this new project is being overseen by NBC Universal as well. So we're expecting some big budget films to be filmed just north of where we are today.
All right, let's look at some economic news and data out there. Says UK construction sector activity fell back in November. Is this development a reflection of the housing market?
Well, yes and no, Chimmy. The PMI construction figure has come in, but for some analysts, it's not as bad as expected, which is why sterling rose 0.25% at early trading. Yesterday, of course, we had the manufacturing figures, and that also wasn't as bad as expected. So for some economists in the city, they're seeing this as a good thing as we wrap up the end of the year. The reading came in at 45.3. In October, it was 44. It was in the 44 figures. And economists did predict that the manufacturing data would be at a 44.0 flat. Of course, it is way short of the 50, but any gains, particularly in this turmoil we're in at the moment, is seen as a positive. But let's have a look at the numbers at intraday. The FTSE All Share is down 0.93%. The FTSE 100 is down 0.99%. And the FTSE 250 is down 0.66%. A lot of that's got to do with Donald Trump's statements. In currencies, as I was saying, the British pound is up on the US dollar by 0.37%, up on the euro by 0.41%, and up on the Japanese yen by 0.21%.
And talking about wrapping up the end of the year, and of course with London weather conditions freezing and freaking out the Londoners like you, what brands of coffee and sweet hot chocolates are consumers grabbing the most?
Well, Chimmy, let me tell you, it is extremely cold. If I was a wise woman, I would be wearing a roller neck up to here right now, but I'm not. But, you know, I don't want to bore you about the hundreds of different varieties of coffees and hot chocolates that are available in the supermarkets. But when it does get to this time of the year, lots of workers around the city will be very familiar with coffee chains' festive drinks. Some of these can be gingerbread or salted caramel. They're just the usual kind of stuff you know to tell you that it is Christmas and you can have a shot of these extra syrups in your drink. But, you know, on quite a serious note, a charity has been looking into just how bad these festive drinks are for consumers. And they have named and shamed some coffee chains who are putting up to 15 teaspoons of sugar in one festive drink. drink. In the UK, the recommended daily dose of sugar is only 7 teaspoons, and that's throughout your entire day. And in one drink, you can have 15. I'll be very, very quick to name and shame a few of them. Starbucks, they have a signature caramel hot chocolate that has 15 teaspoons, which is the equivalent of drinking 3 cans of Coke. Also, Cafe Nero, they've got a salted caramel hot chocolate, 10 teaspoons, and one of my favourites, which was the Starbucks gingerbread latte, that has 4 teaspoons of sugar, so I won't be drinking that tomorrow morning, Jimmy.
Well, health-conscious people like me would have to watch it this Christmas, Thank you. Enjoy the rest of the day, Juliana.